In this episode of Rooted in Retail, I'm welcoming my dear friend, Kelly Gunn, who is the owner and creator of Part-Time Pickers, where she sells premium vintage products. If you're into vintage, you definitely got to follow Kelly on Facebook and or Instagram. We'll link to it all because she's got such great products that she's showcasing. And social is one of the ways that she has built her business. And in today's episode, Kelly is really pulling back the curtain and sharing a very honest and authentic story about how she built this business, how she went from a hobby business to just kind of having fun to really taking her passion, getting serious about it, and creating something pretty magical. She's had some awesome ripples out of creating this business because she's grown so much on social media, and she has created a course, which I love the name, How I Turned My Hobby into a Six-Figure Income, teaching other people to do what she does because she saw a demand in the marketplace. She evolved and she is just so crushing it. And I'm so proud of her because I have been her friend for so many years and have just seen her really thrive and grow and do some incredible things with this business. I mean, she has a combined over 170,000 social media followers, and she is sharing how she built that. And like I said, she's very authentic and honest in her answers. I think it's going to be very relatable to a lot of people listening on how we feel about videos and social media. But she's got some really great tips to help you survive, to help you survive creating that content, to help you do it afraid and really show up for your business. You can find Kelly at facebook.com/parttimepickers or instagram.com/part.time.pickers. We will link to all this as well. And let's dive in to this awesome episode. Welcome to Rooted in Retail, the show that's dedicated to helping independent retailers thrive in today's ever-evolving retail landscape. I'm your host, Crystal Vilkaitis, and I'm thrilled to have you join me weekly as we explore topics that are vital to the success of your store. From marketing to mindset, money to merchandising, sales to leadership, we'll cover it all. Each episode features interviews with industry experts and accomplished retailers who share their real-life insights and actionable advice. Get ready for a great conversation on how to build your dream business with Rooted in Retail. Kelly, welcome to Rooted in Retail. I am thrilled you're here.
Well, thanks, Crystal. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, we're going to have a great conversation. You are super rooted in retail. I met you like 13, 14 years ago, maybe, when we both were at Snap Retail. How is that possible? It's crazy. And you were in the retail world even before I met you. So will you take a couple of minutes and share your retail journey and how you got where you are today?
Well, sure. Well, definitely been in it actually since my 30s. My very first job when my husband got stationed up in Hanscom Air Force Base outside of Boston, Mass, was as a retail manager at the Paper Store, which is a big chain in the New England area. And from there, I heard about being a sales rep because I would have all these sales reps come in all the time and visit me. And I'm like, wow, this seems like a really good gig. How do I get in on this? So luckily enough, they had a regional marketplace. They used to have one right in Bedford, Mass. And they found a group that was looking for a rep. And the gentleman who gave me my first opportunity back in 1996, he said he hired me because my butt didn't touch the chair for 2 hours. He loved my energy. He loved my enthusiasm, and he gave me a shot. And it was a life-changing opportunity. I went from making $10 an hour to my first year, $80,000 a year. So it was life-changing. Found out, hey, I think I've found something maybe that I'm good at. After about 5 years, of course, just having the personality that I do, I'm like, okay, I figured this out. Now what? Now it's the next step. So we, again, being a military family, we got stationed in Virginia, and I decided to create my own sales agency called the Power Group, Proud Outstanding Women Energizing Retail. And we took over the Mid-Atlantic region. Very, very successful. We had 8 gals just going to retailers every day, writing orders. We had about 25 different gift and garden lines. It was so successful that a national competitor actually approached me within 3 years wanting to buy my business. So that was very exciting. So that's what got me into actually the other side of the wholesale world. I started getting offers for VP of sales or national sales manager. So I crossed that fence from being the rep to being the vendor. So I spent, several years being in that VP of sales role. And ultimately, to speed this story up, I'm so sorry. Also, I'm old. It's a long story. What can I say? Right about my 25-year point, not quite, but retail was changing. The bigger your role, the more travel, the more responsibility you have. So gone were the days of owning my own business and kind of having that entrepreneurial control, which was kind of critical for me to be happy. So in 2014, I'm going to step back a bit. In 2014, Kevin and I really, started going to estate sales every weekend and thrift stores, and it was just fun. With all the stress of all my traveling and all my high-level stuff that I was doing, this just kind of made me happy. So I created a Facebook page called Part-Time Pickers. That was 2014. And it was super part-time. It was a very literal name. So that I'd go out on the weekends. I might find something cute. I'd throw it out, try to sell it. And I just, kind of had fun with it. It was a hobby, which is very important to understand the difference. It was a hobby. And 2018 came along and I'm just having fun with that, but I'm mainly doing my regular job. I'm just, my youngest daughter now is getting married. She's, going to be having kids soon. My job was starting to do some like restructuring that was going to require even more travel from me. So I was just at a point where, okay, we're talking 80% travel now. I'm never home. I just was at the point in my life where I didn't want to do it anymore and I wasn't happy. And I just longed for having control. I have no control in my life whatsoever. So I said, well, gosh, what if I've always been good at sales and marketing and, these are kind of my things. What if I took all of that energy, all of that talent and put it towards part-time pickers? Could I possibly replace my income? God, I don't know. With this little thing. And to be honest with you, I didn't know the answer to that question. But I was so kind of desperate. I was like, I don't have a choice. So I'm going to just treat this. I'm going to make the transition from hobby to job and put all of my energy and time into it and see what I can do with it. So that's what I started in 2018, like the end of 2018. And, you don't know what you don't know. I wouldn't consider myself particularly social media savvy. Just to give you context, I'll be 60 next year. So, I'm not from that. Even though we did work for a social marketing company, it sounds like, oh yeah, she must be so good at it. Not necessarily. You learn how to work a piece of software, but that doesn't mean that you know the ways of the world. So, but I've never been afraid to try to figure something out. So end of 2018, I started doing. 2019, you're just really paying attention to, okay, what's working, what's not working, how do I tweak it or whatever. And then the pandemic came. The pandemic was game changing for me. 2019, I think we had I might have made $25,000 in income, 2019 by incorporating a few changes. I completely, redefined or whatever the word is I'm looking for. I changed my business entirely. So, first of all, I added all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, how do I separate myself from every part-time picker out there, from every vendor out there? How do I make myself stand out? And I knew just the basics. Okay, you got to have really good product. You got to, be consistent. You got to have great follow through. So I understood all of these important essentials that I had to have. But then I started paying attention to, Well, is anybody offering free layaway? Is anybody, finding, for me, my niche became new inbox. So I became known as the girl who could find 1950s product, brand new in box, never touched. And it was just by listening and paying attention to engagement and what got them excited, and then taking that and running with it and trying to reproduce it, that 2020 for me was my first six-figure year. So
Woo!
I know, right. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. But so that, in a very brief way of saying, is my story, and has what brought me to where I am today.
Oh, I love it, Kelly. I get chills because I've got to watch this journey. I entered about 14 years ago. It's so fun that you were a retailer, then a rep, then the vendor, and now you're back to retailing, but in a unique, fun way that is so connected to your passion. And if anybody is watching this video, Kelly, you have to explain your wallpaper behind you.
Well, I'm a Pyrex girl. So this is actually from a great company called spoonflower.com. And again, it's my branding. People know me as vintage. People know me as Pyrex. And so on many of my posts that I'm selling stuff, you will see this in the background. And that's their way of saying, they see my wallpaper and they're like, that's Kelly, that's Part-Time Pickers. I need to pay attention.
Yep. Such good branding to where now anytime I see Pyrex, I'm thinking of Kelly Gunn.
Yes, exactly.
It's so good. So you have built this amazing business by following a passion, by being curious. And I'm so proud because I am in the social media space and I have watched you explode online. You have grown an incredibly engaged audience, a large audience. You have about 170,000 combined followers.
Yes.
170,000
yes.
people. This is so awesome. You've had reels go viral. One of your reels has reached over 4 million people. So what do you think has led to that kind of social media following and success?
Well, again, it's always, and this, I'm going to say this as if it's nothing. But it's really just about having compelling content that your engager, your person who's watching it is relating to, is excited about. And the only way, that you figure out what that compelling content is from trial and error, is from paying attention to all of the engagement that's taking place. Now I'm even now, when you're talking about 170,000 followers, you can imagine the chattering, the chitter chatter that's constantly happening. But I'm so in tune with, oh, they really liked this, or, okay, I need to make sure I'm doing this, and just constantly paying attention so that, and it's, you figure out what the recipes are. So just to sidetrack it, reels are super important to my growth. And I think we're going to talk about that a little more, but reels are really important. But I think I did my first reel. I went back and looked it up for this. It is probably a year and a half ago. So I had no idea what I was doing. I'm like, oh, what is this reel thing? And anytime this new technology comes about, for me, it's very stressful. My anxiety gets going and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. Do I have to have makeup on? Oh, I just don't even want to do it. So that, for me, just the idea of just a video thing like this is very stressful. So imagine having to create these things day in and day out. But I didn't want to add, unavoidable or unnecessary stress. So I found a way around it. So instead of me being on camera every day, which personally, it's like, okay, I'm going to get boring at some point. People are, not going to be really excited to see my little face every day. I really wanted it to be all about the product, all about the search for the product, all about the finds in and out of the thrift stores. What am I finding? And it's so fun, or not just thrift stores, it's also antique stores or estate sales. It's any place on this planet that sells vintage. I need to be paying attention to that. So, I decided to, okay, let's, two birds with one stone here. I can get the content that I need, which is real, you guys. It is a struggle. Content. But so let's just say I'm in a thrift store, for instance, and I see an item that I think that I know is vintage and might be of interest. It might not be a good business decision for me to buy it, but all of a sudden I have this great content saying, "Hey, would you pick or pass this, or would you pay this much?" So you can ask lots of questions about items that you don't even necessarily purchase, because now they're on this journey with you and they're like, "Oh, where is she going today? What is she going to see? Oh, would I pay that much? I would never pay that much." And they're getting to know you without necessarily having to see your face every day. They hear your voice, which is fine. And they even come out and say, "Oh, are you not feeling good today? Do you have a cold?" or whatever. But that's cool because they're just part of my family now. They know who I am. So that was my way of getting around something I just did not want to do, be in front of a camera every day. Then I started again paying attention. Okay, well, why does pick or pass, get a lot more engagement than would you pay this much? Or, so by analyzing this and fine tuning it, you grow. So.
Totally. Well, so I heard so many great things in there. One is you really have you've created a community that has a similar interest. And I think that there are retailers listening to this that you might sell something that even that product or that line can create this buzz, can create that interest, and that can create the engagement in the community and get that growth going. And so I would look at some of that as there are opportunities within your store there. And then also you're consistent. I mean, you are showing up with your content. You're thinking about the content. You're committing to it as much as you don't want to. And there are so many retailers listening to this being like, I love Kelly's honesty because I hate content. I don't want to show my face. Like so many people struggle with that, but it is a really great way to stay top of mind, to connect. And like you said, they're a part of your family now. And then you're also looking at the content to see what works, what doesn't. You're trying new things. You're not just like posting and ghosting and never figuring out, what are people paying attention to. You're really analyzing your community and seeing what they want and providing that. So I love it. And I can see how you've had that growth. You have this great analogy with the car that I really appreciate. So what is that?
Sure. So, the big game changer in my social media following has been Reels. And I try to explain to people just how important Reels is. And I go back to a car. I love simple analogies. Pretend Instagram and Facebook are your car and Reels is your gas. And as you're driving along, unless you have, or it's your fuel, unless you have really good performing fuel in your car, you're going to sputter. You're going to kind of run out of gas. You're not going to be performing the way that you should be. But as long as you've got that awesome fuel in your car, you're going to be, running smoothly. You're going to be seeing, getting where you need to go. Reels is definitely that gas. If I had one word to say, the most important thing about social media growth is consistency. Consistency with Reels is critical to getting the growth quickly. Because I'm going to say, I've probably had, just since I've been doing Reels, probably 40,000 growth on Instagram alone. Just in the last 18 months. And that's purely from Reels. And I do not pay on Instagram at all. I do not pay to promote it. It's complete just work. Now, it used to be a day when Instagram would pay me a bonus to do these Reels. And to be honest, that was the thing that got me in. So I'm like, okay, they want to pay me to do Reels. That's enough for me. So I was doing 3, 4, 5 Reels a day because they were smart, and you could see the little bank account get bigger and bigger and bigger with every little Reel that you did. So they have since changed that. However, the other thing that you saw beside your dollars going up is they saw your following going up. And Meta is very smart in that not only were they able to take away that bonus money, but they've also got you now in such a habit of doing it, and that you're so well trained, and that you connect automatically. Okay, if I don't do this, my following is not going to grow. So even though they're not paying me anymore for that part of it, I'm still like the hamster on the wheel, because I'm so trained that if I want the growth, I have to continue doing this. So, and like I said, because it's not a hobby, because it is a job, we all have things in our job that we don't necessarily want to do that are very, very critical to our success and our growth. They have to be a part of your everyday life, and not just one. You got to at least two, morning and night. I try to get one. Somebody can watch one in the morning when they're waking up, 7 o'clock, sitting in bed, looking at their phone. And then I'll get one in the evenings when they're settling down. So at a very minimum, I've got two in there, most days.
Yeah, I thought it was really smart of Meta to pay these creators they're really incentivizing and rewarding Reels creation. And you could tell they're really going all in, but it worked. A lot of creators were seeing that kind of growth. We're loving that paycheck. Then they take it away and you're like, well, gosh, I got to still do it. But one thing you said too is, you don't always have to show up on the camera. You're taking people along for the ride when you're in these stores and you're showing the product and engaging, you're documenting. And that's something I say all the time to our retailers is everything is content. So if you ever feel like I don't know what to say, I don't know what to post, people don't believe it, but people like to know what you're doing behind the scenes. People do like to see you travel along. People like to hear your thought. People like to see where you're going, what you're wearing, what you're up to. They like that connection, and everything is content. We just can make it so hard sometimes, but go ahead.
It's Kelly. So true, because a really great example of that is I was so worried about my algorithm stalling. We went on a trip to Antarctica last December. I was so panicked about this trip. Not because I'm going to Antarctica, but because, oh my God, what am I going to do for content for 2 weeks? What am I going to do? I'm just like beside myself because I worked so hard. I didn't want it to slow down. I didn't want my car to sputter. I didn't want to stop. So I said, okay, I got to come up with something. So there's this great 1950s mug out there that actually says Pyrex on the outside of it. It was from the Corning Company. And I said, I'm going to do a series called Pyrex and Penguins. I took that Pyrex mug all the way to Antarctica. I took all kinds of pictures of Pyrex with penguins, all these things. And were they the best, engaged posts? No, but it kept it going. It kept it going. It kept it going. You do have those diehards that want to see everything that you're doing. So it was just my way of keeping it alive, which is important. Like it or not, you can't take big breaks with that kind of stuff. You can post, you can schedule things. You can do that type of thing to get yourself organized for a trip. But you got to figure out some way to keep it going every day.
It's so true. And I love that idea. Pyrex and penguins. That's so freaking adorable. So and so smart. It's so cute. Okay. So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, I don't feel comfortable doing a reel, or I've never done it yet, so I'm fearful. What kind of advice would you have for that person?
Yes, I get it. Here's the great thing about a reel. It doesn't have to be live. You can record, 10 times until you're getting comfortable with it. And then the great thing now is they didn't used to have this, but you can do voiceovers and you can redo the voiceover. It doesn't have to be, if you need perfect, and you want to spend the time to get perfect, you have that option. You get to the point where you're like, Kevin's like, are you in the bathroom doing that voiceover? I'm like, yeah, I just need to get it over with. So he could tell the echo. He's like, are you sitting in the bathroom? I'm like, yeah, because that's where I am and I need to get this done. So you lose that I need to be perfect thing. So you just got to dive in. And the worst part, I promise you, is the anticipation and thinking about doing it. Just do it. Just do it.
You nailed that. The worst part is thinking about it, the anticipation, because you do it and then you're like, oh, that didn't take me forever. It actually turned out fine. And people are responding. And then, over time you build that confidence muscle of the reels and putting yourself out there, and it does get easier, but done is better than perfect. That's for sure. Yes,
definitely. And guess what? People relate to not perfect. Yeah.
Exactly. I say this a lot. I was listening to a podcast and this woman shared that her friend is a Broadway playwright and she says how you write a character to be somebody that everybody hates is you make them perfect. So
I believe
don't
that.
be perfect. Just
Right.
be you. Exactly.
Love that.
Retailers, it is time to step out of the day-to-day of running your store and step in to a new perspective. I would like to invite you to join me in Denver, Colorado at my conference Evolve. This is built for independent retailers looking to transform their business. Retail is changing faster than we have ever seen before. So is marketing, and so are the tools to help us build our business. This conference is one of the best places for you to stay up to date and stay relevant. And it's super, super early bird pricing right now. So you can get a ticket for as low as $197. Go to crystalmediaco.com/evolve to secure your ticket. And I can't wait to see you in Denver and help transform and grow your store. As you look at your journey and the retail industry as a whole, what do you think retailers need to know to be successful?
Well, I touched on it a little bit. By far, the most important thing is consistency, patience. You need to be willing to invest in yourself. It's not just going to happen by itself. I know in my industry, there are a lot of folks that will have an antique booth and they'll pay the $200 or $300 a month to be able to have this in real estate somewhere. So it's just like having a brick and mortar where you're paying, this overhead every month. For someone like me who doesn't have that, who is, completely reliant on their online business, you need to have that same commitment to your growth and, budget it and set it aside and put that money towards you instead of somebody else's rent. You need to have that kind of discipline, consistency, patience, and those are the keys to success in this.
Yeah. And I know we were kind of talking before this call and you were really stressing the importance of having an online presence and showing up. I mean, the consumer has so many choices now and looking at what you've built purely online. Will you touch a little bit about how important that is?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I'll even have, I have my own class. So students will come to me and say, I really need help with my booth or my brick and mortar or whatever. And my number one thing is, are you selling online? You cannot rely on that little piece of geography, that little region that's around you to come through the door. You need to expand your reach, get out there more. When I first started, I thought I would have to have people come pick up my stuff. So my reach when I was doing my targeted marketing was regional or very specific to where I was living. And then I realized, well, why can't you ship? Why can't you do this? So you start, mentally saying, okay, if I want to grow, if I want to reach more people, I need to put, XYZ in place. So once I made the decision, okay, to go national, all of a sudden you're opening yourself up to so many more opportunities. So retailers today, you absolutely have to, I don't know how you get around this. Have some kind of an online presence and where you're reaching out, even if it's, by the product, by the item or whatever it is about. Yeah, I'm really speaking item driven, but you got to get it in front of thousands instead of, the few people who might be in your area that if you're lucky, they're going to walk in tomorrow. So it just doesn't work. You'll never find the success.
You can't rely just on foot traffic at all unless you're like in the busiest spot in your town and floods of people come through your doors every single day. But most of us are not like that. You cannot rely just on the foot traffic.
No, not independent retailers. You can't. And what's really crazy is I can have a $3,000 day. And I know stores who are paying huge overhead, they're happy if they're cracking 1,000 that day. So the secret is expand your, reach and get some kind of an online presence.
Mm-hmm. Now, Kelly, you went from kind of a hobby business to a business. You took that chance, that leap of faith. How important was that shift in your mindset from going hobby to business?
It was everything. It was just, I treated it like fun. Yeah, when I have time, I'll do it, to it really, and desperation breeds wonderful things. So, I threw myself in a position where you have to succeed. So I had to completely have faith in myself and my abilities and put myself out of my comfort zone and say, okay, you just need to do this. So once I made the decision to actually go, this is my job, I was not kidding. I was up every day, as if I was going to work. I was, paying attention to what's working for other people. I am so, because I've always been like a salesperson, a head of salesperson, numbers are critical. I have daily numbers for every single thing that happens. Just as if, when I, worked for some of these big vendors, they would require of me as their head of sales. I require that of me as well. I want to know, what kind of a return on investment am I getting for this item? I have rules in place that unless you can triple the cost of something, it does not make sense for you to be doing this. So, you have all of these things that, that are critical to success. And once you make that decision to do it, you got to start figuring out what those are. And you do figure it out. If you go every day and you're paying attention and you're looking at other folks and you're researching and you're putting, what you understand, your fundamentals that will work, your marketing and your sales and that type of thing, it will work if you don't give up. You just got to keep going and you got to, give yourself, I always, will tell a student or whatever, they'll be complaining, oh, I just don't have that many followers yet, or I'm not seeing the success you are. And I said, my friend, if you're not giving yourself 6 months, a year, nothing is going to happen that fast. You have to put the work into it. This is a long-term end game. But if you do it consistently, if you invest in yourself, your time, your money, it will happen. But most people, by far the majority of people, will quit. So you've got to set yourself apart from that.
Such good advice. You've got to make that mindset shift. You have to commit, treat it like a business, show up for yourself. Kelly, you've been mentioning your students. And so through this journey of part-time pickers, you've been hearing from your audience and they've been asking questions. And then you started a whole new kind of side to the business. And so talk about how you were listening to what people are saying and what you created.
Well, it's really funny how things spring just out of, necessity almost, because as the followers were growing, I had so many people reaching out saying, well, how do you do this? And how do you do that? And shouldn't I be doing this? And can you tell me how you do this? And just out of a pure efficiency, standpoint, I could not respond to all of these people. And it got unmanageable. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I just had a class, I wish I had a class, number one. If I just had a class that I could, offer to these people that answer all of their questions. And then I wasn't exactly quite sure, well, what does that look like? And, kudos to you for helping me actually, decide what that might look like. And the key to success for me was a pre-recorded class. Best advice you ever gave me. And it's a 2.5 hour pre-recorded class of all my tips and strategies and secrets of how I built my successful online vintage business. And now you can too. So when people ask me, I'm like, now it's easy. Oh, you should check out my masterclass. Here's the link. It makes it, yes, it's an opportunity for me to earn additional revenue, which has been really, really great. It's a blessing. But it's also just a matter of, I don't want to ignore these people. I want to be able to help them. And at some point, it's not scalable. I have to be able to have very quick, efficient, answers that I can tap into. So that's how that came about.
Yeah, I love how you evolved into that. You saw a need. You're like, this will be efficient. It's obviously a revenue stream, which is great, but you have to be listening to your audience and not be afraid to evolve and be there for them. And I just think that I love that you did that for them and what a great resource. And it's sort of like one of the ripples of what you've built, right? And so as you are getting more out there, what are some of the other ripples that you've seen through part-time pickers and your social and getting out there?
Yeah, it's so funny how one thing leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next. So a great example of that is you and I spent some time on your other podcast, Crystal Uncorked. And recently I had a person from WorthPoint reach out to me, and WorthPoint is like a really important industry trade. If you ever want to know what something's worth, you go to WorthPoint, but they also have great articles and interviews and blah, blah, blah. So somebody reached out to me and said, I could really use your subject matter expertise for this article. And then that led to another article and that article. And then at the very bottom of the email, it says, oh, by the way, I saw your lovely story on Crystal Uncorked, and I think you would make a great feature article for WorthPoint. So all of a sudden I'm being featured in WorthPoint. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is just crazy. That ripple, how one thing goes to the next. So
it so does. And that also shows you the power of showing up, putting yourself out there. I mean, I think there's just so many opportunities for retailers to evolve. When you look, if you kind of were like, no, I'm not a podcast guest. No, I'm not an educator. And look, if you want to be just zoned in on one thing and that's what you want to do, then that is totally fine. But there are a lot of opportunities, and with social media and with podcasts and these channels that we all have access to, it makes it a lot easier to see those ripples, to serve more people and to grow our business. And you're just a perfect example of seeing all those little pockets of growth and contribution to your community.
Oh, well, thanks. And it's also a little ego driven, right? So, I always want to be the best at what I do. I want to dominate whatever field I'm in. And it's just a personality defect. I cannot help it. So, I'm constantly saying, all right, okay, I've done the class now. Now what? What's next? What's that next thing that is going to separate me from every single vintage reseller out there? I need to be known as not the part-time picker, not the girl who sells Pyrex. I need to be known as the vintage expert. I need people like WorthPoint to be coming to me as the subject matter expert. So I always was trying to think bigger. I don't want to just sell a few things. I want to figure out, how to make an empire. But, what's the next thing? What's the next thing that, 9 out of 10 people will not think about, will not waste their energy on? It won't matter to them. That's how you differentiate yourself.
Yes. So good, Kelly. What does the future of part-time pickers look like?
It's funny because my kids are always like, Mom, you're doing good. You had your class. You're doing great. You got great sales. Why can't you just, chill out and relax? And, certain people just don't have that in them. So I'm always looking for something next, something new to conquer. And remember, it's not for somebody else. It's for me. So it's exciting. It's, rewarding to be able to know that I did this. I created this thing. So, that is powerful for me. So, if you think about, vintage, and there's a really great example about what I'm about to talk about. So in 2015, Pyrex had their 100th celebration. Their first Pyrex product came out in 1915. So in 2015, the company decided we're going to have a relaunch of just a throwback of like the Pyrex patterns that people have loved forever. And we're going to offer them at a mass market level. It was the biggest success. It was in Target. It was in all the mass market types of stores. And all of a sudden in 2015, and I completely credit that product launch to a growth of generation of new vintage lovers. They've just embraced it. They've fallen for it. So when I watch something like that, and then 2 years ago now, Tupperware had a Mrs. Maisel throwback pattern. And they're like, just like Mrs. Maisel, limited time only, just, these Tupperware bowls, just like 1965. And that product line was so successful. There are so many people who may not, be able to find the original set of Tupperware, who may not be able to afford it, but they sure would love to have the feel of that in their house. So what I would love to see Part-Time Pickers doing next is I'd like to launch a product line that speaks to these folks, that you can love vintage and have this vintage vibe without spending the money or without having the luck of finding it. And, it can, you can still get those happy vintage feelings from it. So that's what's cooking in my head right now.
Oh, I got full body chills when you said it. I can so see this happening. And if anyone is listening or knows somebody who can help Kelly out, reach out. We'll give some info here soon. Actually, this is a great time to give. Well, yeah, how can, we're going to link to this in show notes, but how can people reach out to you, Kelly?
Oh, that's awesome. They can go to my Instagram page, which is part.time.pickers, or my Facebook page. And can I make a point about Facebook before we wrap this up? Super, super important point. The number one thing that people should not forget on social media is Facebook. Do not be completely relying on Instagram. More than 50%, the majority of my business is coming from Facebook. Why? It's a whole different demographic of people. It's people my age and older, different pot of money. They think of vintage a little differently. Maybe they had it versus their grandma having it or whatever. So you cannot do Instagram alone. You have to do Facebook as well. And a lot of younger people are like, I don't want to deal with it. It's a mistake. It's absolutely critical that you're doing both. Sorry.
I'm so glad you said that. I feel like a lot of retailers, they ask me, is Facebook dead? Should I even care about Facebook? And everybody just wants to be on Instagram. And because it's almost like they're disenchanted with Facebook and they want to move on. But man, there are buyers there. There is attention there. And the fact you're seeing majority of sales, yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised. Kelly, are you ready for the resilience round?
Yes, this is the most nervous part. Okay.
Okay. Best business book.
Okay. I'm dyslexic. I have always had a hard time reading. Reading's very hard for me. So I don't commit to a whole book. But I'm article driven, usually industry articles. So.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Best retail technology, like an app or software?
Right now, an app that I use every single day is Meta Business Suite. It allows me to centrally manage my Instagram and my Facebook business on one app. So that's an important part of my day.
Mm-hmm. How do you keep up with the ever-changing retail landscape?
I think I get by telling myself you don't have to pay attention to every single thing that's happening out there. As long as I'm focusing on key things to make my business grow, there is such a thing as getting distracted. So I try to focus on what's working. And, there's a small ear out there happening, but it can drive you insane.
I love that you said that, actually, because we really can get caught up and distracted, and we spend a lot of time on that versus the doing and focusing on customers. And yeah, I love that you said that. Yeah. Because retail is ever changing, how do you recharge your batteries?
Yeah, I'm the worst at that. I'm not good at recharging, but I will say that passion and results and success charge you. That's exciting. That is good for you. And if you can incorporate your family into that so that, it's just a part of your life, you don't have to recharge, if that makes sense. It's just a part of who I am.
Yeah. Your recharge is your passion.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. To help retailers be stronger, more rooted in success, what's a retail foundational best practice? Yeah,
by far, it's just that, consistency. It goes back to what we kind of talked about earlier, but there's nothing more important than consistency.
Yeah. Finally, what do you think the future of independent retail looks like?
I used to say when I was a rep or even a vendor that, in independent, we will always have brick and mortars. Don't worry about that. People want that customer experience, blah, blah, blah. Well, especially since 2020, while I still believe there will always be independent retailers, there will not be as many brick and mortars as we are used to. And the ones that are willing to bring in that online piece might even find themselves transitioning from brick and mortar to online, because there are so many great customer experiences now that you can create online that it just becomes, less of a barrier to have a brick and mortar. So I think, almost online first, brick and mortar second. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Okay, we shared where people can find you. Kelly, this was amazing. Thank you so much for letting us peek behind the curtain at what you've got going on and how you've built this successful and fun business. Be sure, especially if you love the vintage world, you gotta follow Kelly. It's so good. Kelly, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me talk about myself.
Yeah. Oh, I love it so much. Everybody, remember that I'm rooting for your success. Have a great week ahead. Bye. Thank you so much for being here. It means the world to me. Don't forget to join the Rise and Shine newsletter, which is social media news you need to know, sent via email every Monday morning. Go to crystalmediaco.com/rise to join. And don't miss the newest episode of Rooted in Retail, which drops every Sunday morning.